ladies and gentlemen, please join us. Welcome President NASSCOM, Ms. Debjani Ghosh. She has been the president of the National Association of Software and Services Companies, NASSCOM, since April 2018. She has been a veteran of the technology industry. She is the 5th president of NASSCOM and the first woman at the helm in its 3-decade history. A firm believer in the power of technology in enhancing lives and livelihoods, leveraging it for societal good, she was instrumental in developing Think Digital, Think India strategy aimed at establishing India as a hub for digital talent and innovation. She strongly believes technology will have the most impact on humankind when it's used as an enabler of inclusive growth, and that India must lead in the digital era with focus on the responsible build and use of tech as an accelerator and equalizer. Please join us. Welcome Ms. Ghosh.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. You know, for all the time you all spend in the car, in the traffic jams, that frustration building up, I would have got a much louder, I would have expected a much louder response. So we're going to try again. Good morning, everyone. Think traffic jams. Okay, so it's fabulous to be here in Bangalore, and I actually didn't get any traffic jam, either from airport to the hotel or from hotel to this morning. Had a fabulous driver, and it's fantastic to be here. So we are going to talk about something that, you know, when you look at the India tech story, all is hunky-dory. Things are absolutely fabulous. But there is one thing that does worry me. And I think as an industry, this is one thing that we absolutely have to put a lot more focus on. And that's deep tech. But talking about deep tech, Shrikant, possible for me to get the hand mic any which way, so I can just move around a bit. You know, talking about deep tech, how many of you are using ChatGPT in the room? One hand, that's it? You guys do belong to the tech industry, right? Have you all heard of, how many has heard about ChatGPT? Oh my God, oh my God, Bangalore needs to catch up. So ChatGPT is this magic that has pretty much taken over the tech world in the last few days. It's an OpenAI tool available on OpenAI, conversational AI at its best. So you can ask ChatGPT to do anything from generating tweets to write poems to write stories to tell you about when the world is going to end. It usually picks up from conversations that happen on social media, etc. It gives your answer. And the power of ChatGPT to demonstrate this headline was actually generated by ChatGPT. I just asked, the question I put in is importance of deep tech funding or importance of deep tech. And this is the headline that it generated. So imagine what it does to us as humans. You know, we've typically depended on our creativity, etc. But this is almost scarily fantastic. It's super scary. And it's super fantastic in terms of what a machine can do, the power of deep tech, right? So this is really what I want to talk about, India's deep tech imperative, and why we need to worry about it, why we need to care as a tech industry, why we need to get concerned. So we've talked about deep tech, we've talked about the importance of deep tech, and every time I talk to a CEO, they'll talk about the business imperative. They'll talk about the importance of deep tech in completely transforming the business, and I'm sure all of you are dealing with that. Are you getting the ROI from your AI investments? How good is your cybersecurity strategy? You are all thinking about that day to day as you think about your business plans. But I think there is a much more important topic that we need to talk about. And this again, by the way, was generated by ChatGPT, this entire statement when asked about why innovation in deep tech is important. And what AI said is it's important because it's crucial for solving the world's most pressing challenges and unlocking the full potential of humanity. And I want to take a minute here. We all know that we are running out of time when it comes to climate change, it comes to food crisis, water crisis, the inclusion crisis, the sustainability goals that UN has called out. We know that we are running out of time. Any one of us sitting here and saying, that's not going to happen, fooling ourselves. And we also know that at this point in time in history, we actually have the ability, we have the tools, we have the technology that is powerful enough to solve some of these problems, but technology alone is not going to cut it. It's us humans and our ability to use this technology, and that's why the last sentence that AI came up with, I loved it because it's really about unlocking the full potential of humanity. It's unlocking our ability to do magic with the technology to solve for some of these problems. But if you think deep technology, you have to start thinking about how to use some of this technology to solve for some of the really big problems that we are faced with, that pretty much our existence is faced with. And no, I am not exaggerating. This is something that should be top of mind for pretty much everyone, especially the tech industry. The good thing about deep tech is if you look at how the technology is getting used, where's the innovation. There's a fantastic research study that BCG actually has done. It's called Hello Tomorrow. Any of you who, I'm assuming all of you are from the tech industry, but any of you who really want to understand what's happening with deep tech, look it up. It's available online. It's an absolutely fantastic study. And it's very reassuring to see that 97% of deep tech ventures today are actually contributing on at least one of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Majority of it is in healthcare, which I'm not very surprised about, but there's a lot of focus going on into sustainability, mobility, and energy, etc. So deep tech is being used. It's not just potential. In reality, it is being used to address a lot of these problems. And on that note, let's take a look at where the funding is going, right? I'm not going to talk too much about this. We have a fantastic report that we've done with BCG that's going to get launched right after, as soon as I finish, and they will talk a lot more into this. But there's just one thing I want to dive into, which is the funding. They say you really want to understand anything, follow the money. So let's follow the money. What's happening with deep tech? North America, undoubtedly, not a surprise, right? Leader with 59% of the funding, nearly 250 billion, going into funding of deep tech. Areas like autonomous analytics, sensor tech, autonomous driving, sustainability, smart robots. No surprises. APAC coming in second, 33% of the contribution. Okay? The big surprise here is Europe, 8%. Only 8% of the deep tech funding going into Europe, and for a lot of us, I would have expected this number to be much higher because of what you see in Germany, Switzerland, etc., in a lot of the Nordic countries, etc. You would have expected it to be higher given the focus on innovation. So this definitely was a surprise with 8%. I was very happy with the APAC number, 33%, and a much higher CAGR than North America and Europe. APAC is growing 11% CAGR, North America 6, Europe 4. So I was really happy because I thought that meant we are doing something good, given that India is part of APAC. But that happiness was pretty short-lived because when I dig down into APAC, it's a shocker. India is only 2% of the APAC funding. It's roughly around, what, 2.7 billion odd that is going into deep tech funding in India. It does have a very high CAGR. It has the highest CAGR of 31%, but the base is incredibly small. And I think this is a wake-up call, or has to be a wake-up call, not just for the country, But for us, the industry, we talk about world class from India. I've seen so many of you companies talking about world class from India. How do you deliver world class from India without deep tech in India? It's just a fundamental question. Ultimately, it's going to boil down to your innovation prowess. What are you doing? How much IP are you creating? What kind of problems are you solving? Ultimately, everything we talk about, India talent advantage, India ecosystem advantage, what is the outcome? The outcome has to be our ability to innovate. And if we are not playing in this space, then I'm really worried about where we are going to end up, because if we truly, and I absolutely believe that world class from India is completely possible. But that means we have to completely reimagine what we do in the deep tech space. And this is something that I'm talking to government about all the time. Every conversation of mine today to government, to industry, is about the urgent need for reimagination. Whether it is the approach to deep tech, we have to stop thinking of deep tech as individual technologies. We have to stop thinking of it as AI, cybersecurity, quantum. Deep tech is seeing a strong convergence of technologies. And we have to have a problem. It's not so much about the technology, but we have to shift our focus to problem orientation, problem solving, a cluster approach like what Canada does, Israel does. Pick big problems you want to solve. Renewable energy, finding a cure for diabetes. Pick big problems that we as India care about and want to solve, and then build clusters, bring in academia, bring in industry, bring in startups to go and solve that problem with funding from government, funding from industry, and significant urgency linked to it. We need to have a different approach to how our deep tech playbook is built out. Talent is critical. One of the key things, there's lots to talk about in talent, but I'll talk about one thing. Deep tech needs multidisciplinary talent. It's not just science and engineering and design coming together, but it is technology and domain coming together. There's just so much, you hear things like bilinguals, trilinguals, etc., etc. But what that ultimately means is we have to completely disrupt how we teach and how we learn. I'm hoping the national education policy is going to do some of that, but it has to be fast enough. Ecosystem. This one is extremely important, and I'm going to come back to it. But BCG calls the deep tech wave the fourth innovation wave. And this is there in the Hello Tomorrow report. And the fourth innovation wave is the most transformative. It's the most powerful because it's being driven by deep tech. And the most unique thing about it is it's being led by startups. It's being led by innovation, cutting-edge innovation happening in the startups and not so much in the large companies who have led the past three waves. So that's a huge shift taking place. And do we have a strong enough ecosystem in India? Funding, patient capital. Every deep tech founder I talk to in India, this is the biggest concern, especially in the startup space. Our investors don't get deep tech. Our investors don't understand the funding needs of deep tech, and that's another huge problem. And lastly, scale. Deep tech scale will be a lot of build, test, go back to the lab, build again and test. You're not going to get it all right. We have to build that process out. Deep tech is about patents. It's about patentable solutions. So do we have the process to enable companies do that without losing quality in a significantly easier way, quicker way? I mean, there's just lots to think about. Procurement reforms. You can't get into deep tech solution procurement using the so-called GEM. Right? How do we drive these reforms? This is going to be absolutely critical to think about. But there's just so much more to talk about. But what I'll leave you with is, when you look at the playbook, when you look at the deep tech playbook, pretty much every aspect today needs reimagination, because I think one of the first things we have to understand is that deep tech is not equal to how we have pretty much navigated the tech ecosystem the last so many decades, right? The thing I want to quickly dig into is the ecosystem. As I talked about, that's at the core, that's the heart. We need the startups to lead this wave, and are we geared up to do that in India? If you look at the deep tech ecosystem in India, overall, 3,000 deep tech startups, around 2.7 billion funding going into it, so good, growing at a very, very healthy CAGR. It looks very good. But the problem always happens when you peel the layers, when you get in deeper. And when you get in deeper, there definitely is a problem. Only 12% of overall funding is going into deep tech startups. And worse, when you look at inventive deep tech startups, that is startups who have patents, startups who have at least 15% of their workforce actually skilled in these emerging technologies, that number is 485, around 500, if I'm being generous, right? And for a country like India, that doesn't even, I mean, I can't even say it's the tip of the iceberg, because that is not even the tip of the iceberg. That is just too little. And I think we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing or not doing, and what do we need to do to fix it? And one of the things that we have to understand is the life cycle of deep tech and the life cycle of deep tech startups. And especially a lot of you companies who are working with deep tech startups, this is so important for you to get right. Because then you will get the real ROI out of those partnerships, especially if you're into co-creation. But deep tech startups, we have to stop treating them the same as tech startups. We have to understand the life cycle. We have to understand the need that they have a much higher time frame to product to market and actual scale and commercialization, and it is needed. You cannot drive innovation if you're in a rush to get to market and to commercialize your products, which is where a lot of investors and VCs are going wrong. And I think this is something we absolutely have to think through in India. So I'm going to end here to challenge us and all of you to say that, is it time for India to come together and really, really disrupt the deep tech ecosystem that we have currently? What we have is not going to cut it. Whether it is with startups, whether it is with the large companies. You've seen the numbers. It's absolutely not going to cut it. And very soon, the cracks will start showing. And I don't believe we are too late, because this is a marathon. The race to leadership is still, there's no clear winner as yet. There are countries that are clearly in the lead. But a country like India, I think, has so much resilience, has so much creativity. Our ability to leapfrog, as we have seen, is a huge competitive advantage. So how do we leverage that ability to leapfrog, to not just catch up, but to disrupt the ecosystem? And the starting point, I think, has to be with the deep tech startup ecosystem. We as an industry have to come together to build this ecosystem. And I think the target as NASSCOM we are taking is, how do we get to 10,000 inventive deep tech startups in India with patentable solutions, with real talent by the end of this decade or 2030, right? And how do you grow deep tech funding in India? We've put down 2x, but I actually think it needs to be 100x higher. How do we do that? And what can we do together? So with that, again, a pleasure to be here, pleasure to talk to you. Sorry for the strong wake-up call in the morning, but I think this is important for us to internalize, for us to understand, and most importantly, for us to act on. As the tech industry, we cannot sit on the laurels of the past, the success of the past. We cannot expect our legacy success to carry us through. We need to disrupt. We need to transform. We need to disrupt ourselves. The future is about deep tech. The future is about co-creation. The future is about open innovation and partnerships. And in order for us to succeed, we have to build the entire ecosystem. And startups are going to be critical success imperative in this journey. So have a wonderful conference, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Let's hear that for her, please. Thank you.